What is going on? This is the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast, a podcast all about the Utah Mammoth and kind of other things around the NHL. I just took a look at the score. Slovakia, Juraj Slavkovsky has scored, getting Team Slovakia on the board. It is 1-5. Slovakia, third period. Looks like we're going to get a repeat of 2010. Team US taking on Team Canada for the gold, where Slovakia will be playing Team Finland for the bronze. Olympics have been awesome. Canada being down 2-0 against Team Finland this morning, pulling that through before overtime. Two crazy overtime wins for Team US and Team Canada just the other day against Sweden and Czechia, respectively. And it's been absolutely thrilling. And we've gotten to see some Utah Mammoth players. Clayton Keller's kind of bumped Kyle Connor out of the lineup for Team US. I feel like he's looked a lot more, I'm going to say it, versatile than Kyle Connor has. JG Peterka had a point in, I believe, every single game for Team Germany. One goal, and I think it was 4 or 5 assists. I think those are kind of the biggest names that have gotten some playing time for the Mammoth who have made the roster. We didn't get to see Vejmelka have any starts with how well Dostal played. But it's been a lot of fun, Trent. I know you guys went over to AZ Ice Gilbert to watch the US-Germany game with some of our fabulous members of the Discord, the Clean Hits Discord. I don't know how much you've been taking in because you've had your homework assignment with some of the prospects, but have you been enjoying it?
Yeah. We watched the Germany game. The quality of the game wasn't great. Germany kind of got bent over a little bit by US, which was good and bad. It wasn't a riveting game by any stretch of the imagination, but having a watch party at the home rink is a little bit challenging anyway, because I had conversations with probably a dozen people who were at the table and wanted to chit chat about youth hockey tournaments and beer leagues and stuff like that. But it was a good game to be distracted for anyway. So a lot of good conversation about the prospect pool and the draft and all things Mammoth while we were sort of casually watching Germany barely hang on, staving off full-blown embarrassment, just barely. But thought Clayton Cutler, looked good. That was his first game in the tournament. They finally put him in for us. He made some nice plays, had a couple nice block shots, as I recall. Peterka was dangerous the whole time. I think he looked good with Stützle. So, I mean, all we got to do is just trade for Stützle and we'll be fine.
There we go. I like that idea. I really like that. Well, this episode's going to be kind of a grab bag episode. We asked some of our friends in our Discord some topics or questions they'd like covered. Me and Trent spent about an hour kind of talking through what we're going to talk through again. So that's how we prepare here at Clean Hits Hockey. And I'm going to kick it off with another Olympic-themed question here from our friend Flo. And that is, will Dylan Guenther and or Logan Cooley make their respective team rosters in the 2030 Olympics, Winter Olympics? What do you think?
Well, let's look at the Team USA roster currently. USA has, if I could find it,
Daily Faceoff has it. Brady Tkachuk, so Jack Eichel, Matty Tkachuk, Jake Gensel, Austin Matthews, Matt Boldy. I think pretty much all 6 of those names will be there again. Maybe not Gensel if he starts to decline enough with age. Jack Hughes, Dylan Larkin, Tage Thompson. I can't see any of them not being there in 4 more years. Maybe Larkin for the same age reason. JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck. I doubt any of those 3 will make it. Kyle Connor, again, has not been in the lineup for several games now. I can't imagine he would. So really, you're kind of talking about Cole Caulfield, Jason Robertson as guys that would draw in. Neither are centers.
Thought here is which centers are point per game to 90-point players? That's what I expect from Cooley. Do you think Cooley is a point per game center in 4 years?
I do, yeah.
He's
on that trajectory.
Matthews doesn't qualify. He's barely off the pace, but close enough. Eichel certainly does. They'll be older. Dylan Larkin's definitely not a point per game player. Brock Nelson will be old, and he's not a point per game player. And JT Miller will be old. He's not a point per game player. Vinny Trocheck will be old, and he's certainly not a point per game player. Tage Thompson will be in the prime of his career, and he is a point per game player. So I think that if Thompson is playing center, wing, I'm not sure. Matthews will be there, center, wing, not sure.
Yeah.
Eichel will definitely be there. I do think there's certainly room for Logan Cooley to make the squad. Who are some big American top prospects coming up that might give him a run for his money? I mean, Celebrini and Bedard are both Canadians. I think you'd have to worry about Will Smith maybe. But I'm not sure how much you have to worry about Will Smith if you're Logan Cooley. He's got a good head start on him. James Higgins, maybe. Again, I tend to think Logan Cooley's in a tier above. Take may age poorly, but I see room for Logan Cooley there. He also has the advantage of being a good 200-foot player with some jam to his game. In 4 years, he'll be fully filled out. He'll be his final form of a player. And I imagine that if he keeps the same attitude and approach to the game, he's a guy who could conceivably be more valuable in a depth role than some of the other guys mentioned here.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, now let's take a look at Dylan Guenther for Team Canada. Macklin Celebrini, Connor McDavid, Tom Wilson, Horvat, McKinnon, Seth Jarvis, Mitch Marner, Nick Suzuki, Mark Stone, Brandon Hagel, Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand. I think there is absolutely room here.
Yeah. As a goal-scoring winger, he's up against Sam Reinhart, who will be 34.
Yep.
So
and Reinhart was in today, and he did score. Where is he? Weird. He is only listed on the power play. Did they roll 13 forwards today? I don't know. Daily faceoff may be a little bit off, so excuse me if some of these lines weren't completely accurate.
I think obviously Marchand, who's a winger, will be 41. That's probably a no. Mark Stone, who's a winger, will be 37. Hasn't had the healthiest career. That's probably a no. Tom Wilson has been fun. That type of player tends to have the wheels fall off all at once. He'll be 35. So that's probably a no. So that's a lot of wingers coming off the board. They play a little bit of a different style of game than Dylan Guenther, though. He's not all that similar to Marchand, Stone, or Wilson. He's more up against somebody like Reinhart, I think. Seth Jarvis will probably be there. Brandon Hagel is probably not a similar play style, but I think there is some room. But you have to imagine Connor Bedard's going to take a spot. There's a lot more young talent, Canadian prospects and younger players coming up that'll give him a run for his money. Gavin McKenna. There's a lot of Canadians that can make this a little bit tricky if you're Dylan Guenther. So I think the competition will be tighter for him, but it's really that role. You know what I mean? The dangerous sniper role, the guy who's going to set up, just outside of the slot on the face-off dot or top of the circle and really let it fly as a setup guy. I'm not sure who's coming up that's really going to give him a ton of competition for that role.
Well, Bedard,
the trigger man on the power. Yeah, Bedard. Yep.
But there's probably room power play one. Macklin Celebrini, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, and Cale Makar. Holy cow! But again, I mean, I think there's more names that are potentially coming off of Team Canada, especially in the forward roster, than Team US. Team US looks a little bit younger. I mean, I think there's still room for a guy like Gunther, who does have a pretty decent two-way game as well.
Yeah.
So I would say there's a pretty good chance he can make it, as long as the McKennas of the world don't kind of lap him here.
Yeah, I think Crosby's obviously coming off. I would think Sam Bennett's coming off. He'll be 33. That play
Yeah.
style doesn't really last. So we're talking about half the forwards here. I mean, Bennett, Crosby, that's two.
Stone.
Horvat will be 34. We'll see. I don't know about that. Marchand, Stone, and Wilson. So that's 5 or 6 guys that I would expect to turn over. Meanwhile, Dylan Gunther's going to get better and better. He'll be a 40 goal scorer by that point, I imagine. And there aren't too many of those available. There's more of them available to Canada than anyone else, but there aren't too many of those available.
Yeah. Going back to Team US, one name we kind of forgot is Adam Fantilli, who could be a valuable
he's
center.
Canadian.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. He played in the USHL and the NCAA, but yeah.
Yep.
He's from Ontario. Yeah.
That's right. That is right. So I guess there's another piece of competition for Gunther. And then if Byfield ever
for sure
is able to kind of put it all together. Matty Beniers is an interesting one for Team US. Maybe taking more of that Dylan Larkin 4-line center guy, though. I don't think it would be the same role as Cooley. And Cooley has that optionality to play wing if it came down to it, I feel, like on a team like Team US.
Yeah, the versatility is definitely something that benefits Logan Cooley and his ability to play different amounts of there are different roles on the team, different roles, different lines. He doesn't have to be on the power play to be effective. He doesn't have to be necessarily in the top 6 to be effective. That won't be the case for a lot of the more exclusively offensively inclined options.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely don't think either are locks. I think both have very good chances, though. Better chances than I initially thought looking into this question, with kind of going into it blindly and not having put too much thought into it. I think they both have a better chance than when I initially read the question. I almost feel like Cooley is going to have a harder time than Gunther, just because less turnover for that roster.
Hard to say that. It's always harder to crack Canada. You know what I mean?
True.
In each case, they've got a good shot, because I expect Logan Cooley to be a point per game center in 4 years, and I expect Dylan Gunther to be a 40 goal scorer in the next 4 years. And I expect both of them will be highly regarded for not being one-dimensional offense-only players who have play a fairly well-rounded 200-foot game. They're both competitive players. Dylan Gunther, that shows up in clutch goal scoring, and Logan Cooley, that shows up in grit and pushback.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Well, and before Cooley would be making Team US's roster, he is going to have to come back to Team Mammoth's roster first, which ever since the injury, it seemed like things were going to line up to the Olympic break. He was skating in non-contacts before the break. I'm glad they didn't rush him back to any of those games near the end of that kind of stretch right before the 2.5 week Olympic break. Even the team was hot. The roster was really vibing off of each other. This was kind of a perfect scenario, and we kind of said that once this injury happened, and they initially said that timeline of around Olympics. It's like, perfect, just give him the extra time. I think we need to do a little bit of mammoth line projections here of what does this look like when Mr. Logan Cooley comes back, because out of nowhere, the Mammoth decides to get number one center in late November, early December, and Nick Schmelke. Nick Schmaltz has been out of control, playing top center with Lawson Krause and Keller. We've talked about on this show. Our friend SLC Puck has talked all about it. We are trying our damnedest to save a long form "what do we do with Nick Schmaltz" episode. We keep on hinting at how we feel about it. I'm sure more of our opinions are going to come out here. But I'm trying to pump the brakes so we get past the trade deadline, so we don't spend an hour and a half dissecting every option and just watch them get moved. I don't think that would happen. I think that would be a bad idea at this point. But we are going to hold off about what to do with Nick Schmaltz long term until we can at least ensure that that's an option. But I would say there's a 90% chance he is not moved, and he is at least here for the rest of the season. Logan Cooley coming back. I don't want Logan Cooley to just take Schmaltz's spot at this point. I think that would be a huge, huge blunder of essentially finding gold from a piece of bronze to keep the Olympic theme going here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to because there's the further complication of Alex Kerfoot coming back too. So what do you do with Kerfoot?
Well, yeah, and honestly, that shouldn't be a complication, but Mr. Yamamoto has decided to be just fantastic as the Swiss Army knife for this team, playing a high skillsy role, playing a pesty role at times. He's came in and out of the lineup, and every single time he comes in, it seems like he gets a boost. And I mean, how many goals did he have in those last couple games? He had 2 against Carolina. I think he had 5 in the last 4 games of before the break or something.
Yeah, in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, he has 2 goals. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, 4 goals in his last 5 games. 4 goals in his last 5. Yeah. And then if you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he has 5 in his last 7. And what you're left with there is a guy who he's putting up half a point per game. Half a point per game and a super depth role. I mean, sometimes playing with like Tanev and O'Brien and Stenlund and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Not easy to do. So if you're assuming that Alex Kerfoot comes in, you're talking about, do you want to just talk about like the depth chart maybe?
Yes.
And then make lines out of it, right? So like center depth, you've got Cooley, Schmaltz, Hayton, Stenlund, assuming that McBain moves over to the wing, right? Rather than Schmaltz.
But you also have then on the McBain and Kerfoot who can slip into the center.
Yep. And then on the left wing, to me, that leaves Keller, Krause, McBain, and Kerfoot. And then on the right wing, you've got Gunther, Peterka. Who's the other one? I mean, Carcone, Yamamoto, Boot,
O'Brien. No, it's the logjam is going to hit with Logan Cooley, and I don't know how to phrase this, but the team's playing so well, you almost don't want to touch it, but you have to. So, all right, I think a non-negotiable with projected lines is the top line right now. I do not think you can touch Krause, Schmaltz, Keller. I think that's just an absolute non-negotiable. That line has to stay together until chemistry starts to run out. It's been too good. The chemistry has been unbelievable. It's been a tough line for opposition to play against. Krause has done wonders for this, and I think he is a big reason why Schmaltz is playing at the caliber he's playing at.
The John Chaika line.
The John Chaika line. And yeah, I was looking back at Nick Schmaltz's best game of his career after he had, I think it was 4 points, the hat trick, and an assist near the end of that run before the break. I'm blanking on who it was against, but I believe he had 7 to 8 points against the Ottawa Senators way back when. Took me a while to actually find the highlights. And it was this line was together. This line of Keller, Schmaltz was playing center at the time for Rick Tocchet, and Krause on the same line, and that was the best game he's ever had. And I just think this is a reawakened Krause to an extent, even though he's been playing great all season. It brings enough of everything that you need. Now, second line currently has been JJ Peterka, Barrett Hayton, and Yamamoto, which I think is the obvious spot of where you can begin to tweak. And then the third line's been Michael Carcone, Jack McBain, and Dylan Guenther, which when it was initially put together was fantastic. And then it lost a little bit of that honeymoon phase, if you will. And I do think there's room to tweak there. Now,
think that, if you look at that line, what could be the second line? It's got to feature Logan Cooley, and it's got to feature Dylan Guenther. Those two have always had really great chemistry. I think what that line misses is a little bit of a grizzled, bigger, more physical presence. They played with Jack McBain in the final season in Arizona, and that trio did have some good chemistry. They have great off-ice chemistry, of course, Guenther and McBain. There's been chemistry there before. So could you look at McBain, Cooley, Guenther as your second line behind Keller, line. Schmaltz, Krause? Yeah. The Whirlpool line, exactly. Yeah. And then that leaves poor JJ Peterka, the rambling man, who's not been able to get consistent minutes with consistent line mates, playing with maybe Carcone and Hayton. Carcone, Hayton, Peterka.
I don't mind that. And I think if Carcone starts to slump a little, you can inject Yamamoto into that line. And kind of Kerfoot. Yep. And
then I think that leaves your fourth line here with Kerfoot, Stenlund, and Yamamoto. Which is a great
like line. Kind of that revolving for whoever needs that spark for the third line. Yeah. That's how I would like to see it. Now, I think there can be an argument that you just go oops all kids and do JJ Peterka, Cooley, Guenther on the second line and just see how it goes. And then you could have a McBain, Hayton, Carcone, or McBain, Hayton, Yamamoto for that third line. And that'd be kind of more that prototypical like energy line that you typically see. And then you can have more of the grinding line of a Kerfoot, Stenlund, and the leftover of Carcone or Yamamoto for the fourth.
Yeah, I would agree that helps Peterka in one way, in which it puts him back on a skill line, which I think he's best suited for. It doesn't help in another way, which is he tends to like to shoot from his off wing. He likes to play right wing, even though he's a left shot. He likes to have his stick blade in the middle of the ice to get off that big shot of his. So if he plays on a line with Guenther, you're going to have to move him over to the left wing. And you've got both triggermen for Cooley to set up, which ideally works out phenomenally, and we get buckets of goals from that group. But that would be the one challenge for Peterka, is slotting him over on the left side, which is not his preferred position to get that shot off.
Yeah. And I think this is where we've seen a lot of line shuffling early into the season. And honestly, after Cooley went out, it seems like we finally were able to settle into lines that have kind of stuck together for a much more extended amount of time. It took a bit to kind of find this type of chemistry. I think McBain and Gunther were put together against Toronto for the first time, maybe in kind of mid to late January. But it's going to be interesting, and it's an illustration of the logjam that's about to happen as more prospects start funneling into this team, because we haven't brought up Daniil Boot, and Yamamoto and Carcone have kind of made it easy to not bring up Daniil Boot. In fact, he's still in Tucson right
Ben
now.
McCartney, yeah, he just got sent down. Ben McCartney stayed.
Yep.
And Ben McCartney, I think, might be a better option at this point than either of O'Brien or Tanev. He's having an amazing season down in Tucson. He's super noticeable in every game. He hits, he fights, he scores, he can skate. He's good defensively. I mean, he was kind of a surprise producer late in his WHL career. Drafted as more of a grinding physical presence. He found a scoring touch there for the Brandon Wheat Kings late in his WHL career and was very impressive as a bit of an older prospect over in the Dub. He's slowly climbed his way up the depth chart in Tucson, and in the games that I've watched, he's always been extremely noticeable. He had a good showing at camp, as I recall, as well. He's kind of playing the role in Tucson that you would hope that Tanev might have been able to play here, and then some. And something tells me if he were to get inserted into the lineup, I suspect you get more out of the kid than you do out of either of O'Brien or Tanev at this point. But I don't know. He's got to not only climb over those two, but he's then somehow got to win a spot over Carcone, Yamamoto, or Kerfoot to get actually into the lineup and not just win the right to be a healthy scratch. And I just don't see that happening. I don't know how you can justify sitting any of those guys to give a kid like McCartney a shot. It seems a little bit late in the game to be experimenting in such a way.
I would agree, but I don't think we have the exact timeline for Kerfoot, right?
Him and Cooley are both in full contact jerseys, so I think it's soon.
Okay, yeah.
But even so, yeah,
maybe McCartney gets a little cup
so.
of coffee real early into this before either or both are back.
Yeah,
I am a O'Brien supporter when he comes in and plays, 2 games and then comes back out of the lineup. I feel like the team. I would like to look at the win rate of O'Brien first game back into the lineup. And I'd like to look up the goal differential of those wins, because I feel like a lot of those games have been big wins and statement games in a lot of ways. But he should not be an everyday player. And McCartney had a really, really good training camp, if I remember correctly, too. Turned a lot of heads.
He's putting up a point per game in Tucson, and he's on pace for 100 penalty minutes. 100 penalty minutes and over 70 points is his pace. He's on pace for over 30 goals in the AHL. He's only 24. He's a big, strong, fast kid who really is showing a nice scoring touch here. Turbo hasn't really found his turbo speed for the team.
No.
It's not been a good fit so far. And to your point, I love Liam O'Brien, and I think if you're going to pay somebody to sit, he's the perfect option.
Yes,
we don't want to be paying we don't want to be paying Tanev to sit, and we don't want to be paying Ben McCartney to sit. We need him developing. So if somebody's going to sit out more often than not, Liam O'Brien seems like a great choice for that.
Yeah, I would agree. And let's just say Kerfoot is not ready to take a game right when the break ends and the Mammoth are playing games again. I think McCartney would be a nice plug in, give him a spark, let him make his NHL debut, and let's see how it goes. And speaking of Boots, I would not be surprised if we don't see Mr. Daniil Boot in the roster again for the rest of the season unless there's an injury.
Yeah, I could see that. I thought that he showed exactly what we wanted him to show in terms of flashes at the very least. He was able to translate to some extent, not nearly as effectively, what he was showing in Tucson. The net front presence, the physical play, the responsible 200-foot game, the speed, I think, of the NHL provided some challenges for him. Not that he's slow of foot, but things happen fast. And I think that you saw that to some extent in the more limited production. He's actually played more NHL games this year than AHL games, which is hard to believe. He had 28 games with Utah and only 20 in Tucson. In Tucson, he put up 17 points, and in the NHL, he put up 7.
Interesting.
So we saw flashes, and I think with some better puck luck and a couple of better bounces, that scoring rate would have been higher. I think. He at least probably deserves, 3 or 4 more points than he got, based on positioning and effort and being where he needed to be. And he had a few bad bounces, had some points taken away. I think maybe a goal called back. Maybe he would have had an apple on another called back goal, if I recall correctly. So I was really happy with what I saw from him. I'm in no way disappointed by the fact that he's been sent down. I think that even if he doesn't end up getting called back up, it's probably a good thing both ways. It allows Utah to be a little bit more patient with him, get his confidence back now that he's seen what he needs to work on at the NHL level. And it's probably an indication that Utah's healthy and performing well if he stays in the AHL.
Agreed. And as they make the playoff push, there may be more of a need for those McCartney types that can kind of bring some more oomph and some piss and vinegar, and are maybe a little bit more comfortable with making big hits and confronting other NHL vets. Where we saw this with Lawson Crouse at the beginning of his career, where there's being a power forward in this league is a tough responsibility and it's a tough role. And not every player is going to come out there and be willing to drop the gloves with the opposing power forward or top pest or big bruising defenseman. Matthew Tkachuk and Brady both were able to, and I think that has a lot to do with just having grown up in the league and around the league the entire time. They probably aren't as worried about, punching Nathan MacKinnon in the face in their third game ever, where a guy like Lawson Crouse probably needs to get a little bit more comfortable with doing things like that. Daniil Boot, I feel, being gangly and younger, is probably kind of in that phase right now where he doesn't feel confident enough to use the full ability and spectrum of what his play could turn into. I do remember
if you include if you include the preseason, Ben McCartney has 6 fights this year.
Wow. We need to get
6 fights if you include the preseason.
We need to get him in.
Yeah, he's got
we need to get
4 regular season fights. Yeah. And being down in Tucson and watching games down there and watching even on TV, he's very, very noticeable. Brings a ton of energy, a ton of hard work, smart player, coach's dream. Just a good old hard-nosed Canadian prairie kid who plays the right way.
Yeah. And I do think Simashev will be pulled back up. At some point here, whether that is to be an extra defenseman if the team makes the playoffs, because you are allowed to have a couple extra roster spots after the
Black Aces.
And I could see him cracking in the lineup because watching the Olympics, I'm not sure that Alimata has fully gotten his groove back, unfortunately. So don't know if we can really rely on him, and maybe Simashev can take over that DeSimone area. With the trade deadline coming up, I do think the defense is really the only spot that I could see this team making a splash in. I been wrong before, and I will be wrong again. But as we talk through this forward group, I just don't understand where that change could come from. I guess the only thing would be moving someone like Hayton for an upgrade. I don't want to go too far into this because I'm sure once Olympic break comes back, trade rumors are going to be flying around like hotcakes. But the defense seems to be the main area where you could make a small trade for an upgrade or a mid-sized trade for an upgrade, and then maybe backup goaltender as well. But Ben McCartney was a 2020 draft, correct? He was the lone pick that we have on the roster after the NHL stripped everything else away, or we traded everything else away for Taylor Hall. That leads me into the idea of this trade deadline and Nick Schmaltz's potential new contract and the idea of asset management and being patient, because they're hanging in there on that top wild card spot. If this team was in the Pacific, I would say don't even make a move. Maybe get a third pairing defenseman or a backup goaltender, but that's it. I wouldn't even entertain anything else because they would be so well locked into a playoff spot if this team was in the Pacific, because that third, second, oh gosh, even the top spot in the Pacific is up for grabs. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And unfortunately, this team is very unlikely to catch Dallas for the third spot in the Central, and will have to live and die by funding one of the two wildcard spots from all of the Seattle Kraken, Anaheim Ducks, Los Angeles Kings, potentially the San Jose Sharks. And it's going to be a battle. Now, where I'm going to tie back in the idea of patience here is directly to the Los Angeles Kings, who have not exhibited that over the course of the past couple of years when they did kind of a mini rebuild, mini retool, and acquired a bunch of picks, kind of sold off some of their aging core and vets from the old Stanley Cup era teams. As they were kind of getting worse, they kind of tried to do their best impression of BA, getting some top picks just because of their record. They were never really lucky enough to win a lotto, even though they grabbed Quentin Byfield second overall. But since then, they have moved out a ton of this core. They have just made another trade to bring in Panarin, and then they lost Kevin Fiala in the Olympics for the rest of the season. So Kevin Fiala has just essentially morphed into Panarin. They're kind of in the same spot they were before the trade, where they didn't acquire a second real high-skilled winger. Maybe you could say Panarin's an upgrade from Fiala, but I think that difference now with Panarin getting a little bit older is not huge. And this was a team that could have had guys like Brock Faber, our own Sean Durzi still on the roster. Man, I need to go through some of these other top guys that kind of got moved out, or picks that turned into decent looking players as well.
Yeah, I think the big one was Faber, and I think it was like a 19th overall pick for Fiala.
Yeah. And that, I bet you that 19th overall pick would have been Yurov? Danila Yurov for the Minnesota Wild? Sounds probably about right.
That seems right. Yeah, that seems right.
Which, this is a team struggling with center depth. They probably could have used another big Russian center to go under Kopitar's wings and learn how to play a full-rounded game. Brandt Clark probably could have been in a superstar pairing with Brock Faber. That would have been a 1-2 punch. But you move Brock Faber and you don't get that 1-2 punch anymore. And I look at that lesson, and then another lesson with the Ottawa Senators on the other side of the conference. And this was a team that was putting it all together. You got Tim Stützle, who is arguably the best player from that acclaimed 2020 NHL draft that isn't looking as top heavy as it once did. Brady Tkachuk, obviously a powerhouse in the league and superstar. Jake Sanderson has looked fantastic, and you can make that argument that he should be in the top 3 out of that same 2020 draft that they got Stützle from. That is a hell of a core. And then you added guys that you drafted late, like Ridley Greig and Shane Pinto. So this team drafts really, really well. The problem is, after that 2020 draft and 2021 draft, where they did make a pretty big mistake, not grabbing Gunther, right? No, they took Tyler Boucher right after Dylan Gunther. Anyways,
say never going to play in the NHL. Yeah, not one game.
Yep. But they also traded for Jacob Chychrun from the Arizona Coyotes for the 12th overall pick in 2023, which turns into Daniil But in 2 seconds. Chychrun's not on the team anymore. They also
one of those seconds we have this year, in a year where they don't have a first because of the ridiculous trade protection fumble in that deal a couple years ago. So they have no first and no second, and no DeBrincat and no Chychrun.
Yep.
And no Boot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of major assets out the door for nothing in return. Incidentally, just to go back to the LA thing real quick, it was actually Liam Ogren that was taken with the LA pick, which is funny because he was a big piece of the Quinn Hughes trade. So, like, if LA had been a little bit more responsible with their assets, they might have had the ammo to pick up Quinn Hughes.
Yes.
Something to think about, an alternate reality. But instead, they have a injured Kevin Fiala, no Ogren, no Faber, and Liam Greentree for Artemi Panarin, who doesn't really get them any closer to winning because now Fiala's gone, and it's mostly just a mitigation to keep them probably in that mushy middle. So not going to get a top pick, and flip a coin if they make the playoffs, right? So
yep.
It's a tough spot for them. There's a very good chance they'll end up drafting, 15th overall.
Yep.
Which is kind of the nightmare scenario for them.
Yep, I would agree. And I look at kind of some of the rumors and some of the conversations of what we could do by moving this year's first, and maybe some prospects to go big game hunting. And you keep on seeing that the Utah Mammoth is in those rumors for going get big game hunting, but we are in that rare situation that Minnesota ended up being in, where you have a lot of prime assets because you draft well and you have a strong roster to begin with. I would rather go for the top of the top than what's maybe available this trade deadline and wait for that next Quinn Hughes or that next Matthew Tkachuk to become available. Maybe there's a different Tkachuk that will become available if the Ottawa Senators miss the playoffs. Rather than pushing some of those chips forward to get kind of the pieces that LA did or that Ottawa did to get the Chychrun, Fiala tier type players, I'd rather amass the assets and get the elite guy down the road, because I just feel like this roster's got great chemistry right now. I think that bad losing streak was just the slump, and it all happened right at one time. I don't think this team's going to be able to make the full contention run yet anyways. So why not hang on to all of the Tiges, the Desies, the picks right now and go for the Grand Slam later?
Totally agree. And I mean, when people talk about trading these prospects to bring in a piece that's going to help you win now, not even sure what that would be, honestly. I certainly hope we're not talking about the Nazem Kadri, Vincent Trocheck tier of player, or the Justin Falk, Vladislav Gavrikov tier of player.
Yeah.
You've got Kobo Duan leading the OHL in points per game. Kobo learned how to skate, and he's looking like an absolute menace. He's going to help the team as soon as next year, potentially. Probably split time. You've got Caleb Desnoyers leading the QMJHL in points per game, minimum 10 games played. Rybakin, the Russian kid, joined his Q team late from the AHL where it wasn't working out. He had a really hot start. So minimum 10 games played. Desnoyers is the points per game leader in the Q. And that leaves Tige as the points per game leader in the dub. So the three CHL leagues, the OHL, the QMJHL, and the WHL, the points per game leader in each league is a Utah Mammoth prospect. These are guys who can contribute to the team as soon as next season, potentially. Probably better to be patient and take the longer road with those guys, but their value is not likely to go down. Time is very much on the side of the Utah Mammoth. Simply by sitting on your hands and waiting, you'll necessarily get better anyway.
Yeah.
Every day that passes that Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther get a little bit more experienced, a little bit more mature, the better the team gets. Clayton Keller's not on the back nine. Mikhail Sergachev's not on the back nine. Sean Durzee's not on the back nine. They're in a really good spot to be very patient. And then, people might look at some secondary prospects, right? Like Daniil But, Dmitry Simashev, Maverick Lamoureux, who are not currently leading any leagues in scoring, but are playing phenomenally for a professional hockey team in North America. And these guys were brought on board to be foundational changers of the makeup of the team. We've got a kind of a smaller team, especially up on the top end there. And these are three huge, giant players that are going to bring a very special and rare and unique element to the team at some point, and is really going to change the makeup of this team, change what it means to face off against the Utah Mammoth, with Maverick Lamoureux, Daniil But, and Dmitry Simashev all being huge, all being able to fly out there, and all showing a tremendous amount of skill in their professional seasons thus far. So I don't think you can move those guys either. You've got these 6 first-round picks that are not currently on the roster, that all bring something very unique and important to the future of the team, and all are just steps away from coming in and making an impact. And I think that's so much more valuable than what you're going to potentially be able to get in return, which is an asset that's likely declining, has likely hit the high watermark, and is unlikely to foundationally change the makeup of the team in its contention years. I think that the core of the team is Cooley and Gunther. And I think that the support of the future of the team, when they're not playoff contenders but cup contenders, is going to be your Keller and Sergachev group, underpinned by these 6 first-round picks we mentioned, who are very near to making an impact.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So whenever I see kind of those EP40 rumors and whatnot, I'm just like, no.
We don't need Elias Pettersson if it's going to cost us any of those 6 names. I wouldn't do it.
Yep. And I look at the roster and I go, down the road, I think Sergachev's a fantastic player. I think he's stepped up into a number 1 role. I think he is more in that top 12 to 15 to 18 player in his position rather than that top 10 or so. Love to maybe find that upgrade, because I'm think Simashev is going to be a very complete player. I think he's going to be a very good one. I don't know if he will ever reach that kind of top 10 level either. And I look at Minnesota going from a team that hasn't had a top center for years, or a true top defenseman. Spurgeon's been great for them. But he's been kind of more in that Sergachev tier. Faber definitely has been turning around and looking like a top defender, but I wouldn't say he's in that top 10. And now they added Quinn. So I would just kind of looking through the recent drafts.
Yeah. And speaking of the draft, right? Like we go ahead. Go ahead.
I think an interesting scenario I just kind of circled of maybe a team that realizes they tried, it's not working out, the assets are diminishing, and it's time to correct the mistakes. And I don't think it would happen necessarily too soon. But if Brady were to ask out, obviously I would want to be making a push for that, right? But what if it goes further and there's a guy like Sanderson that becomes available? Or I'm going to do another scenario too. What if Detroit makes the run this year? They get into the playoffs. Maybe they get in the playoffs the year after that. And then Larkin's kind of slowing down. Their prospects are more in the middle rather than kind of top line players with some of the guys they've recently drafted. And this is a team that hasn't had much draft luck. When does like a guy like Moritz Seider become available? And again, this is all crazy hypothetical stuff, or even like a McAvoy.
Everyone would have said the same thing about Quinn Hughes 2 years ago.
Exactly. I was trying to think of comparables and kind of that age range. Because like the Sam Dickinsons drafted by the San Jose Sharks, they have plenty of time to figure this out. The Zane Prek by the Flames, same situation. Even Lev Shinov and Chicago. I don't think we're talking about that. I'm thinking we're talking about youngish players drafted between 2017 and on that are top players in their position that their teams may slowly be changing directions.
There's also another option here. If you keep all your stuff, and Caleb Desnoyers is a foundational piece, and Tisha Ginla, who's young for his draft year. These guys are not a whole lot older than the kids in this class. And this class happens to be extremely deep and high-end defensemen available. In my current top 10, I've got Ryan Lynn, Daxon Rudolph, Carson Karls, Albert Smits, Chase Reed, and Keaton Veerhoff. So that's 6 of my top 10 players in this draft are defensemen. Some of those will slip a little bit. And if we qualify in wild card 2, we've got a mid-teens pick, and we've got 3 second rounders, 2 of which are very, very early. You could move up. You could move up and land yourself a Daxon Rudolph or a Ryan Lynn before you know it. And then you have a really interesting pool of young defensemen coming up as well. Any of those guys have the potential to be high-end defensemen. Not all of them will be, but they all have the potential. Those 6 defensemen specifically, I think, really have that potential. And then you could probably even just stay put and swing for the fences with Xavier Villeneuve, who is a good home run swing if you feel like taking a risk. But the point here is there's options and there's time. You don't need to go for broke and trade the whole farm for Justin Falk or Vladislav Gavrikov, or give up a first-round pick for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, or any of these other rumored names that are out there that are less than ideal, right? I don't know if Vancouver's going to move Phil Roenick, but that kind of thing. To your point, you can sit on your hands and you can wait. And the Wild wouldn't have gotten Quinn Hughes if they hadn't have drafted Zeev Buium. So having those pieces in the pool is very important when it comes to future trades. And the more pieces you have in the pool, the more you're able to move off of them and still recover, and still have a steady stream of reinforcements coming in on ELCs that keep you cap compliant.
Yep, I completely agree. And then there's the whole case, and we don't really have time for it, but the whole case of too much roster tinkering and breaking up chemistry, which we've kind of seen with the Jersey Devils, where they had a really interesting thing going with a lot of interesting prospects. And then you're bringing in the Timos and the Andre Palats, and you're missing out on some of the names you wanted. So you're just filling in spots anyways. And it seems like this weird experiment where you put a right arm on the left side and it's not really just working. And Nashville did this years ago when they brought in Granlund and I think Duchesne in the same offseason, and someone else that year too. It was like this team that was performing well, and then at the trade deadline, and I do think they had Duchesne from the offseason, but the Granlund was the trade deadline. But they loaded up at the trade deadline, and all of a sudden they just kind of didn't look right anymore. And yeah, I think at this point, I just want to see maybe a better bottom pair defenseman. If we can move Tanev for even better fourth liner, like a Fasca type, that would be something that would be of interest. I don't think he's available, but those tinkering moves, the small ones that upgrade in the area where maybe the chemistry isn't great on this roster, or just the depth isn't perfect or exactly where you want it to be. That's all I want to see this deadline, but time will tell. And as we get closer to it, we will discuss more about the rumors we're seeing, what could potentially be going down. But right now, let's be patient, because the biggest pickup this team is going to get is a 1C returning to the roster in Logan Cooley. And they somehow found a very, very good 2C because of Logan Cooley's absence already. Let's keep the found gold. Let's keep the prospects.
Completely agree. Because if you had asked me, what are the chances that Utah could make the playoffs and have all 6 of these first rounders not on the roster and have a whole bunch of picks still in the coffers? I thought you were crazy. So
yep.
the mid core, the medium core is good enough to get us in there. We have a real shot at it. And you haven't had to dip into the pool. There aren't teams that have this luxury. This is a very special and unique situation they're in, especially for a team doesn't have any top 2 picks. They never won a lottery. They won the Caleb Denoyer lottery, but they never won a lottery pick, right?
And honestly, this conversation would be a little different if they didn't win the lottery last year. And we're talking about, I'm trying to think who got drafted around 11th or 12th last year.
Justin Carbonneau, or
there you go.
Somebody like this. Yeah. But that's not what happened. And when you don't have a Connor Bedard, when you don't have a Macklin Celebrini, when you don't have a Sidney Crosby or a Nate McKinnon, you need the numbers. You need a steady stream coming in. They've done some consolidation, trading a couple of pieces for Peterka, a few pieces for Sergachev, some picks for McBain, some picks for Dursey. They've done some of the consolidation. At this point, I think it's time to see the cream rise to the top and see exactly who is the cream of the crop, and you hang on to your golden pieces in a way that LA didn't. They made the wrong decisions and chose the wrong pieces to move, and it's hurt them and set them back and made them kind of just a middling team that doesn't have a whole lot of hope of going in either direction, and that's what needs to be avoided. So just hang in there, enjoy the playoff run. Enjoy the fact that we're going to be in it till the bitter end, and we're going to have a lot of fun over the next 25 games. But remember, the brightest days are still ahead, because the Calvary's coming, and we've got a massive amount of high-end DLCs on the horizon.
Yep, completely agree. Well, we will have more and more trade deadline content. We will have a Schmaltz episode once we know we can have a Schmaltz episode, and we are going to be beginning to do our midseason rankings and grades for all of the roster. I think we're going to do 2 parts for that coming up kind of on our agenda. So make sure you are liking and subscribing to Clean Hits Hockey, the podcast, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And you can join in on the discussion in our Discord at discord.cleanhitshockey.com. And obviously, if you want to help support us, you can grab any of our swag at shop.cleanhitshockey.com. cleanhitshockey.com to get your Dylan Gunther t-shirt, your Mammoth Club t-shirts, your Mr. Logan Cooley t-shirts before he comes back. And we will be putting out a brand new design for the first Utah Mammoth game post-Olympic break. So keep your eyes out at that. We'll do definitely one t-shirt giveaway for it to get it going. Otherwise, we will catch you next week. I am Brad. We got Trent here. Anything else you want to say? Let's be
USA,
playing Freebird at 8:30 a.m. I want to be playing Freebird at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, Sunday. All right, everybody. Ciao.
We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.